guys. Thanks for putting this on. I know it's not as easy to do as it might look because we've been putting these out every Thursday, so they're a good time, and I've enjoyed doing these a lot. So I'm happy to get on here and help you guys out by doing a little presentation. So, like they said, I'm the offense coordinator at Franklin High School. Down here in Milwaukee, southwest side of Milwaukee. Going to go over our seam read concept today. So, if you don't know about what we run, I mean, we're primarily an 10-11 personnel team. This year, we were lucky that we had two really good tight ends. Ryan mentioned on his that, the one that was a senior this year, it was a D1 kid. He's actually going to Illinois State. So from we had their DC on earlier here tonight. So he'll be down there. So we were able to get into a lot of, 12 personnel stuff this past year, some 21, and we'd even go, we had a double tight empty package. We'd go double tight quads, that kind of stuff. So we have a lot of different formations and things that we do, but we primarily, we're, kind of the opposite of Bayport in how we run the ball. We're probably 90% zone. We run some counter. We don't really run true power. And we sling the ball around quite a bit. So Franklin's kind of always been that way ever since Jesse Miller came to town back in the right around 2000. We were one of the first teams that ever went to the spread. So we feel like it gives us an advantage just because there's not a lot of teams out there that invest as much time in it as we do. And, defenses don't see a lot of the things that we run on offense. So give you guys a little insight into one of our concepts that we do that's been really good for us. So seam read. So why do we run this? The original reason that we put this play and some of our other read concepts in was because of, we see so much defense of the week from teams. We show up on Friday night and we'll see a defense run something that we never saw on film, or they'll come out for their first defensive series against us. We'll march down the field and score, and then from then on, they're just doing totally different shit the rest of the night. So this was one of the big reasons why we did that. It's also really good against those defenses that are super multiple and move around a lot. So I would throw our defense into that. I'd say our defense is probably, the best I've ever seen at stemming around and moving guys in different spots. So we had no way, but before I was at Franklin, I was the OC down at Kenosha Indian Trail. And in order to beat these guys, I mean, we had to have these kinds of plays just because we never knew what they were going to line up in or how they were going to defend us. The second big reason was that, most defenses, I think the number one play that they want to try to take away in the passing game is four verticals, right? I mean, that's why you're seeing the growth in all these different coverages. You got your quarters, palms, riplets, match, the three match that Ryan went over earlier. They don't want to get beat on the seams, okay? Understandable, right? It's an easy pitch and catch for us if you're going to leave the seams open. And our philosophy behind this really is that if you're going to pattern match us or play pattern match coverage, well, then we're going to coverage match our route. So we're going to do the opposite of whatever you're doing. So if you want to match us, well, we have ways to adjust to that too. And it really has become now our replacement for four verticals. Excuse me. It allows us to be very multiple within just one concept. So we can look at a ton of different ways just within one game, right? Our seam read runner can end up doing several different things. We have a lot of different tags that we can attach to this to make it look a ton of different ways depending on the defense that we're going to see. So, for the untrained defensive eye, if you're unfortunately some of the teams that we play in our league don't have the best coaching staffs. To them, it looks like it's 4, 5, 6 different plays, and they have to prepare for all of those. And then one other thing that I've heard a couple of guys talk about tonight was that, it allows us to really focus more on ourselves during practice. Instead of overanalyzing our opponents during the week. So we can focus on just this play, and we know that we're going to have built-in adjustments no matter what the defense does. So we don't have to say, okay, well, they run this coverage, they line up this way, they do all this different stuff. We don't have to worry about practicing all of that throughout the week. So this is how the play originally looked when I first learned it. I learned it, from Dub Maddox, who's the big, the originator of the R4 system. I've been pretty big into R4 ever since about 2013. So that was the first year that we installed this. It was primarily back then run as the way that he teaches a lot of their stuff, a rhythm. Your rhythm route is your vertical route, your read route's the intermediate, and then you have the fin route is kind of your rush route, which is sort of like a check down. And this is just how we did it. The problem that we ran into, like I said, when I was at Kenosha Indian Trail playing against Franklin was, we didn't know how they were going to line up. So we couldn't come out on a Friday night and just have these pass concepts that were locked into these routes, right, without being able to adjust what was happening on the fly. There was just no way we were going to win. We weren't going to be able to beat those guys. And in order to do anything, if we wanted to go to state, we have to beat Franklin to come out of our league. If you have you're running regular smash or curl flat, 4 verts, 3 verts, it's not going to work against our defense. Like it's just not, because they're too good and they're too good at matching what you're doing. So it evolved eventually into the seam read concept from this, which is more of a true, 2-man levels concept. And we still do use the R4 progression. Although, I've really kind of moved away from a lot of the R4 stuff in the passing game. I think it is a good starting point for a lot of stuff. And I know I've had a lot of guys reach out to me since I spoke 2 weeks ago on our passing stuff about wanting to talk R4. We still do use some of it, but a lot of the things that we do in the passing game have kind of evolved to another level beyond that I think works better for us. So the way that this play would work for us, we still have a rhythm route, which would be the vertical, a seam route and a go route. The second in the progression is the read route, which would be our seam read. And then the third, number 3, or the rush route, would be a fin read. So we actually have 2 read routes on this play. We tend to lock verticals on the play side or opposite side from the seam read just to hold defenders in place in their half of the field. I found that it works better to keep a safety from peeking back into the middle of the field towards where that seam read runner is coming from. So you'll see on the next slide what I mean by that. But what we would do for a little while is we would allow our seam runner opposite of the actual seam read to run also kind of a seam read, but he was locked to either running a seam or a post. And the problem when he went to the post was if that other safety was up over top of him, he could still drive down even if we came to that number 2 guy on the seam read. And it was kind of taking away some of the bigger explosive plays that we were looking for. And that also gives us a natural look off from the QB. So he's always looking opposite of wherever that seam read is going. And that just helps hold defenders in place. And then our seam read runner has a lot of freedom based off the cap from what defense is doing. So cap, again, is another R4 thing. So coverage, alignment, personnel. And really what he's looking for are a couple different things. One is the depth and or rotation of the safety. And then we look at a lot of different things that we do with man coverage as well. And then our fin read runner really ensures that we have an open check down based off of what is happening with the seam read guy and any overhang linebacker. So this is what the concept looks like for us now. So based off of what you saw before, it was kind of locked in. We had another fin here. This was a lock dig, and this was a locked fin. So what I was saying here, our number 1, what we will do is we'll give our QB the freedom to say, okay, I like the seam better, or I like the go route better, depending on what kind of coverage you're seeing out here. Maybe we have a corner who's not very good, or we feel like we have a better matchup. We'll allow him to go with our H first out here. But, we can also do a lot of tags and different things over here. So, like Ryan talked about, his match cover 3, like, yeah, well, if they're going to do that and carry our 2 vertical, we're probably not just going to run it like this. We're probably going to switch release or do some other stuff over here, maybe run a scissors concept or something over here that's a little different. Okay, but we're always going to have one of these 2 routes be our number 1 in the progression. The number 2 is going to be the seam read over here. So again, like I said, he's really looking at 2 kind of different things. One is if they start off in 2 high, or if they start off in 1 high is where he's going to start at. But I have it drawn up here like they're in a 2 high because this is primarily what we see in our league. We started seeing a little bit more variation in coverages, but essentially if you're not playing, or seeing cases like a cover 1, cover 3 team, or seeing Park ran some of the Iowa State 3 safety stuff against us this year. But primarily teams are going to play quarters in our league. So we see a lot of 2 high. So what he's thinking here is this: if this safety is going to do if he's going to rotate either back to the middle of the field, like let's say they're going to rotate to a cover 3, right? So he's rotating back to the middle, or let's say they're rotating the other way where the safety on the right hash is going to rotate to the middle. So he's the one coming down. His initial thought process is, can I stay straight on the seam route? Is there anybody capping the space up here? If he can take that, then he's going to continue going. Okay. If he feels like they're rolling to a 3, Okay. Or maybe it's cover one rat or something where they're dropping a guy into the low hole here, and he thinks that he can beat them on a slot fade. We give him that option as well. So really against any sort of a one high coverage or man, you're going to see him do one of two things. He's probably going to continue on his seam, or he's going to end up running the slot fade. Now, if the team wants to stay in too high and they're going to stick in that, what he's doing is reading the depth of the safety as he's releasing off the ball. So let's say that this safety doesn't get a lot of depth, right? So he's just going to go, playing some sort of a catch technique, right? So he's only going to get a couple steps of depth here. Well, the shallower he is, then the sharper my angle has to be coming out of my break, because I want to attack that open space up here, right? Well, if he's going to get a ton of depth where he can drive on a post route or stay over top of a post route, then my break is going to be much flatter into a dig route underneath here. The third read in the progression, now the fin read, is going to be this. His job is to make us right to ensure that we have it checked on. So he's going to read underneath coverage, which is typically overhang backer. We see a lot of 4-2-5 by us, so this is typically going to be, like your Sam or nickel guy. And all he's looking for is this guy going to try to carry in wall number 2? And if he does, then he's going to continue carrying inside. Now, if he sits and doesn't carry, then he's going to sit out here, okay? So that's essentially the base way that we're going to do this, right? So a couple of different things that I'll give you right now. So like I said, we'll do a switch release over here, okay? Big one for us. The other one that we do like especially if we're going to see any sort of like cover 2, which we started. Again, another thing we saw a little bit of this year is we do have a tag to kind of turn this into a smash concept where it becomes a corner route. I'll erase some of this stuff here so we can draw those in. But you can see there's a lot of different things that we can do off of it that makes it super multiple for us, right? So the smash concept is just another way, to attack a different coverage. So this is a good, I would say it's not an all-world beater. If I'm being honest, like, with Ryan talking on here, this is not a concept that we're probably going to run against Muskego, because it's just not great with the way that they're covered down over everybody and how they're going to carry our guys with their stack backers. It just doesn't work too well for us. If we're going to have to do some sort of a switch release off of it. If we go to the 3x1 version now, so really, I think it's basically 4 verticals, right? You got your vertical. It could be a vertical. This just becomes a check down, right? Because, for the most part, when you think 4 verticals, right, you're more often than not want to hit the seams. Okay, so that's our thought process. Same thing now when you go to 3x1, just like 4 verts, this guy just becomes that number 3 running that deep cross route. He's aiming at about 20 to 25 yards on the opposite hash mark. So our tendency here would be to tell him to attack. This is not a great scale drawing. Okay, but we would like to save as much space away from this safety. Okay, so like we would give him, we usually say like the 25% rule, right? So there's 25%, or there's 100% of space in between the 2 safeties. Okay, we only want to attack 25 because we want to give the quarterback the other 75% to fit that throw in there if we have it. Okay, now, and it's also going to depend again on like what sort of trips coverage they're playing, right? If they're playing solo, where they're going to match 3 vertical with the backside safety, we might do something different. Maybe we'll switch release. We'll do this and have this guy now become the crossing route, and then he is now our, team read runner like that. That's one option. Or if we're seeing like a stubby or special where they're going to man up out here and play 2 read off of 2 and 3, we're going to do something different, right? Then we might get into a situation where we'll tag something over here, something different over here, right? It all depends on the coverage that we're going to see. But in reality, this has become, like I said, our answer to 4 verticals. Great concept against about 90% of what you're going to see. And that's really all I got for this. I wish I had film to show you guys. Unfortunately, my first year being at Franklin, I don't have any film of us running it. I got locked out of all my other schools about 10 minutes with them leaving there. So I didn't get any of it downloaded, but so.
One question for you.
Yep.
When adjusting routes on the run with your Z, do you see a lot of missed assignments?
Well, it depends, one, on the kid. That's probably the biggest thing. So I will say this is for us right now. Like this kid, our Z is a stud and is probably going to be a Division I receiver. So no, right now. But the kid who's playing X for us, if we bump him to this spot, like and formationally, I'm huge on moving guys around. So we have just a little tag system where we can move guys around to get anybody to be this guy over here. So he could, very easily end up here. That kid, yeah, he might miss some. And I will say the biggest one really that they miss is going to be how sharp to make this angle when they cut, right? That's the biggest thing that we would see. This rotation, we don't see a ton of that anymore. I mean, we don't, if you were on our clinic last week, we had Dante Barti on and he was talking some of the Rip Liz stuff. We don't see a lot of that by us. And maybe there's teams around the state that run it that I just don't know about yet. But, primarily if we see a cover 3 or any 1 high, they start in it and they stay in it, right? So 2 high, though, depending on the kid, like I said before, however deep this safety gets, we do struggle sometimes to, break off our angle at the right angle, because every kid wants to run a post route, right? They want to score a touchdown. I mean, that's about the only thing I can think of as to why they do that.
All right, we've got another one here, and maybe you won't be able to respond or give the exact to the one, but what is the verbiage of these 2 play calls coming in?
Like as far as what we call the concept. So I'm not going to share what we call it right now because we're a no huddle team and we're going to be more of a no huddle team now and it might give it away. I will say that if you're an R4 guy, they did call it Seahawk. So it's all kind of mnemonic terms. So Seahawk was for seam read. They had a lot of plays that were that way. Like that's how I originally learned it. And that's what we called it for a long time. It has since changed to something that's a little easier to signal in and fits. So like I went over my presentation last week. If you guys saw that, if not, you can find it on my Twitter profile. We break our plays down by family groups. So like this would fall into like what I call our object read category. So we have a couple plays in that, and they're all named in a certain way within that category to indicate to our quarterback what family it is. So that they'll be new for us this year, but in the past we have called it Seahawk. As far as like what do we call the rest of the stuff? I mean, our formations are all R and L words, and then we just tag whoever we want to be. And we have other terms that tell them who the single receiver is.
All right, then the last question: do you ever use your tailback for check down and run, drive / hitch, kid on a vertical?
Yeah, we'll use our tailback in the passing game quite a bit. So if any of you guys know Mike Beck, our O-line coach, he's a really, really good O-line coach. And I remember the first time talking to him about pass protection. I said, what do you want to do with the running back? And his thing was get him the fuck out of there. So we use him in the passing game quite a bit. Yeah, on this, he would have a built-in check down on typically, and it depends, again, what family of concept it falls into. Like this one, any of our object read category plays, he's going to have like a check to the flat on this. So he would run, if he's, I didn't want the laser pointer pen. So he would just get up here and then it's going to be out to the flat underneath, because we can tag, again, ways to be multiple. We could tag different things on this. Like I'll say this, another tag that we'll run on this play could be, let's say we're in nub trips here. So we have our Y is over here, we're trips away. So I'm just going to pretend that, pretend he's here. We could go corner and a flat like this. And then what we would do is that would kind of fall into another, it would combine 2 categories for us. So we would play this really off of the movement of a boundary safety. So we could throw the corner flat if he wants to come back and match number 3. Or if he's going to stay here this way, then we would just read it the way that I just told you guys. So there's a lot of different things that we could do with the running back. You could run a post and a wheel with him. There's a ton of different shit that we do with him. So